now Korea's in a really weird spot. They can't play 2 cards this turn. They can only play 1, and none of these seem like great options. Because if they play Vicious Fledgling, they can't trade off into the Jade Spirit, so it gets traded off pretty easily, even with just a hero power. I think Vicious Fledgling is probably the best option because you sort of force the hero power or removal next turn.
I was going to say, you're forcing 2 mana, so that's something. You're forcing them to take an extra 2 damage.
Yeah, it hinders development, which I think is a pretty big deal because if they do have development to make that turn, they have to make the decision, well, do we want to leave this Vicious Fledgling
Which
alive?
the answer is always no.
The answer is usually no.
The answer is actually always no.
All right, the answer is always no.
You just don't leave the Vicious Fledgling alive.
Sometimes you just got to learn to say no, Rob.
What's this? Well, to Vicious Fledgling, what's the scenario, TJ, in which you would actually just let a Vicious Fledgling live? If you were at 300 health?
Yes.
Okay.
If your face was unable to be attacked for some reason, maybe due to a minion with taunt, or due to you playing the current Tavern Brawl, where your hero is immune.
Or if you are planning to draw Hemet Nessingwary off the top of your deck.
Or, yeah. Or if you're trying to bait them into going wild with Hemet Nessingwary, but then you're happy if they Hemet Nessingwary, because then you slam the Bittertide Hydra.
Speaking of Hemet Nessingwary, you wish you could draw that once that giant Hydra comes down.
Yeah.
That's a big boy.
And to be real, that is nearly the best draw in their deck. Even more so, I think, than Living Mana, because it presents even more power, and it isn't vulnerable as much to Primordial Drake going into the following turn if you're not able to piece together lethal. So I think Bittertide Hydra was the best draw in their deck, and we're really starting to see the Mexico having to Feral Rage and tank the 7 damage early on in this game sort of come back and haunt them. Not that they had a choice. It was really the only way that they could have got through that Shell Shifter. But you can see why this deck, when it has Innervate early on, is really good. And talk about from the Aggro Druid side because it just gets there, and Savage War is going to end the game.
I was going to say, it's just going to get there in this game, and that is going to be a quick 1-0 for South Korea. South Korea came in here with, frankly, a lot of expectations. We talked about certain countries being earmarked for success as the tournament went deep, and South Korea is one of those teams that the second you saw the roster, you said, okay, this is at least a top 8 team, definitely capable of getting to top 4, even with the rest of the stacked country roster, but getting a quick win there. And I do find the Bittertide Hydra kind of bailed them out just a little bit, because as we saw, they chose a riskier line in the opening, just going wide. The swipe came off the top for Mexico. Things about evened out, and that is a matchup where, as you said, the Jade Druid is usually going to have a little bit of trouble dealing with either the Bittertide Hydra or a wide, thick board.
Yeah, I mean, that's why cards like Bittertide Hydra, Living Mana, are in the deck, because a lot of times the deck does go all in, and cards that have significant downsides but are overstated for their cost are in that deck, because at that point in the game, those are when you want to see those cards drawn. And it's just the way the deck's built. You can't say that that match was won because of the Bittertide Hydra. That match was won because that matchup is good for that deck for those very reasons.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the matchup thus far. As we saw just a second ago, Handsome Guy getting that win for Korea. Just need 2 more now to advance. Irvin G takes a loss on the Druid. Next up, though, we're going to have Epsilon taking on Dione. Epsilon on the Hunter, Dione on the Paladin.
Epsilon on the Hunter brings back a few memories from early on in the Hearthstone Global Games. I believe there was a week where Mexico brought a Hunter with Ysera?
That was week 1, and they ended up losing that. And that was the only time they've lost in the entirety of the tournament. But worth noting, the only game they won in that series was with the Hunter.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. And I like to see innovation, and I think one of the things that Mexico did well was not necessarily innovating decks, but innovating lineups and innovating, what type of decks they brought with each of their classes. They brought Jade Shaman really early on in the tournament, where not a lot of players or not a lot of teams were even picking Shaman because Evolved Shaman didn't exist yet. But definitely was something that impressed me was their ability to bring these weird decks and pilot them at an expert level.
Right. Yeah, one thing that Epsilon spoke very highly of with her team was the ingenuity. She very much praised Irvin G for being kind of the mastermind behind a lot of their deck choices. And it's paid out for them in spades, and that hasn't necessarily been the case throughout the entirety of Global Games. We talked a lot about, for example, Singapore, right? Singapore had some very interesting approaches to how they built their decks, what they specifically brought, and it didn't necessarily always work out. So, we praise ingenuity, but the ability to take ingenuity and actually make it translate into results is frankly something to be proud of.
Yeah, I think one thing that Mexico did well was, their pairings early on.
Yeah.
I had a chance to interview a lot of different players throughout the Global Games. Some of the media pieces you saw, that was me on the other end interviewing, even though you didn't see.
I actually missed the TJ stats, by the way.
The TJ stats?
About food.
Oh, yeah. Those were also me. A lot of the players that were hard to find, that didn't have many results, I just asked what their favorite food was, and that became sort of a thing.
TJ, I'm going to give you a moment. What's your favorite food?
All of it. Food. Food's my favorite food. Quite obviously.
I was going to say, you and I both look like men who just enjoy food. So
yeah, I think pulled pork's my favorite food.
All right, well, taking a look at this game now, as we pointed out, Hunter versus Paladin, we did see on the mulligan there, Diane choosing to throw away N'Zoth, so we do know what's in there. Epsilon's Hunter not looking like the sort that runs Ysera because we did see the Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah, this is seems to be a relatively aggressive Hunter deck, and it also looks like a Hunter deck that is probably pretty targeted at certain things. We see a Hungry Crab. I wouldn't be surprised to see at least one Galactic Crawler in the deck.
I was going to say, that's kind of the way it feels like a lot of the mid-range Hunters play out now. You have these cheap beasts and they line up into your curve well, but they also just have the upside of just blowing open games if you hit the specific targets. This is a problem now that Hunter faces, and we're kind of seeing it as Hunter really needs to go like 1, 2, 3. They need to go into the one beast, which she had, but she wants to save obviously against Paladin, into that Crackling Razor Maw, into Animal Companion, Eaglehorn Bow, something. And this is just, frankly, going to be a bad start from the get-go.
Yeah, it really is. And you mentioned it, Hunter is definitely a curve deck. That's why they can afford to play those beasts, because it's not only helps them in those weird matchups where they want those tribal target beasts with Hungry Crab and Galactic Crawler. It also just means they have additional one-drops that help fill their curve, or additional early beasts that help fill their curve that you can buff up with Crackling Razor Maw or what have you. So, a lot of times when players are building Hunter decks, they get to the point where they put in Alley Cat, and they're like, well, I need more early beasts. Right. We saw Firefly be an inclusion because they need that one drop. Hungry Crab. If you expect a lot of Murlocs, then Hungry Crab ends up being sort of a replacement for that. An aggressive list, a lot of times you want at least 6 one-drops. So you have to decide between Hungry Crab and like Jeweled Macaw, things like that. So, and in global games, you are rewarded a lot for having decks that target specific things because you have a choice. When you go into a match, you can look at their 2 decks and say, what are they likely to play? And then you have a choice. You can play your deck that's heavily targeting one thing, or you can play the deck that's you paired with it that does something completely different. That's more of a lean deck. That's more of a well-defined meta deck that you can place in that slot.
We've certainly seen just so many of the Paladin decks brought to the Hearthstone Global Games being more Murloc-oriented, being more forward-facing. So the Hungry Crab's certainly not a bad read, but the only purchase it's going to find in this matchup is likely Hydrologist, and I think we see it come out before then just to try to get something going on the board. Yeah.
This is an interesting play from South Korea. They coin out a hero power. And I think what this is a nod towards Houndmaster. The Houndmaster, the Wild Pyromancer can still trade over this really easily. And then if you get into a situation where they Houndmaster and they value trade, you have the ability to Consecration and still clear the board. So I think it's a nod towards that. Because otherwise, just having a Wild Pyromancer and coining out a 1/1 isn't really a necessarily strong play.
All right, well, Epsilon taking it upstairs, saying we got to get this moving on. It's very clear what type of Paladin deck this is now. They understand that they have a very limited window in which they can actually do things. So she has 100% abandoned the value trade.
Yeah.
She's abandoned the get rid of the Wild Pyromancer because it's a powerful tool plan, and it's just going upstairs. Again, she has 2 weapons in hand, which translates out to a fair bit of damage if she can dodge a taunt, if she can dodge the heal. Sometimes control Paladins get a little bit bogged down by the heavy cost cards in their hand.
Yeah. It's very true. And they decide not to go for the Consecration, instead go for a play where they're almost guaranteed a board the following turn, which is the Eldor Peacekeeper. They may not find a spot to be able to use that later on as the game goes, but Mexico actually picks up Sabina Highmane, which is, frankly, the best Eldor Peacekeeper target in the deck. Consecration can be hard to use later in the game against Hunter, and by later in the game, I mean turn 7, turn 8, because you don't do anything with it.
Right.
It's not a necessarily defensive tool. The board may not necessarily even line up to where Consecration is going to be good. But Harrison Jones.
Museum time. Go. Gotta ask you, though, there was an opportunity for Epsilon to play down the Tundra Rhino, put the weakened Houndmaster into the 1/1, and just leave the Peacekeeper up and try to stick the Tundra Rhino for the Hymen on the next turn. Chose to go instead with the bow. What do you make of that?
Well, they have 2 bows in their hand, and with
Just feeling like you have to get it going.
with the way their game plan goes, it seems like they realize that they need to get in damage early, and they need to be able to get into a situation where they can utilize every charge of both of their Eaglehorn bows, or be able to have the opportunity to use every single charge of both their Eaglehorn bows for efficiency of damage. So,
Sure.
I definitely think that bow is warranted there.
Well, the bow, while warranted, was checked handily by Harrison Jones, which also checks the high main handily. If the high main comes down, Harrison would trade very evenly into that, and then the Consecration lines up to clear up that, and then possibly something else that comes down the following turn. So this ended up being a situation that worked out pretty good for South Korea in preventing the high main development.
I watched a movie the other day called The Conjuring, the second version of The Conjuring. And it's a horror movie about demons and stuff. I don't know. I close my eyes because I'm a wuss. I don't even know the plot. I just know there's a lot of scary noises. But at the very end, when everything calms down and there's no more scary stuff going on, I can actually open my eyes. The protagonists of the story put some knickknacks from all of their demon adventures in this giant room filled with previously possessed items. And I feel like that's what Harrison Jones does with his weapons.
Probably, albeit a little bit less scared. He probably doesn't close his eyes so much.
No, but, he's the protagonist.
Sure.
We're the ones who close our eyes.
Whenever the weapon gets put in the museum.
Yeah.
So
I hope that story fit well with a lot of the viewers at home.
I like to think they're sitting there at home, not feeling debated, but instead feeling pog-jammed.
Yes.
At stories. Meanwhile, Epsilon now in Mexico managing to mount a little bit of an offense here. They have the board. They have been pushing damage. Got usage out of at least the second bow. And now, South Korea down to 15. That said, you are going into turns that are generally ruled by either giant taunts or minions that heal.
Big boys, as we call them in the industry.
In the biz.
In the biz.
We call them big boys.
Yes, we do. And it's a pretty scary situation. Say you play a Curator. Curator all of a sudden gets run over by Savannah High Main, and then you get into a situation where they just snowball the tempo out of control and you can never come back. So I definitely think a pivot here is warranted.
Little sidestep.
Yeah, especially since, Curator is literally going to pick up 3 cards that they already have in their hand. It's going to pick up Hydrologist, Second Stampede Kodo, and Primordial Drake. They literally do not need Curator. So going with Consecration is just more powerful here, especially considering they're going into next turn to some of those powerful 8-drops, Primordial Drake, Ragnaros Lightlord. So definitely like the pivot. Playing on curve there could have been one of those times where the demon comes out and makes some scary noises and you.
Is that the theme tonight? Or are we just going to keep hearing Conjuring references? Because I got to be honest, I have actually not seen The Conjuring, so your memes are not really ringing a bell with me.
Well, it's more of a thematic kind of thing. It's not necessarily that specific. It's
sure.
Actually, it is because of the Harrison Jones reference. But just forget I said anything. What did I say? Nothing. That's right. Move on.
Ooh, Epsilon had the chance to make a very symmetrical play that would have made me very happy with 1 crab on the left and 1 crab on the right, but instead chooses to float 1 mana and just very much upset me.
I don't know if I like that play. I think it's very important to weave in hero powers at this stage. I think holding on to at least 1 crab is 100% correct because you need the kill command activator. But that shortens their clock by at least a turn by not hitting that hero power button. And what does the 1/2 accomplish in this scenario?
It definitely is a little bit of an eyesore.
Yeah.
On the left all by itself.
It needs to live for 2 turns in order to, and now no taunts to be played, in order to get to the point where it deals as much damage as the hero power. And their game plan right now is not subtle. There's been cards that have been dead in the hand for a long time. They know that this high main probably won't last too long and get in too much damage. And so I would have maybe liked to see a hero power that turn. They played it pretty quickly as well, and they sort of made the call at the very last moment to not play the second one even. So I don't know. I felt like a hero power would have been better, but I think it's going to be pretty bad news for them regardless of if they played it or not because of how strong the hand is from Korea. But who knows? Maybe it would have changed things.
We saw Epsilon gave a little bit of a smirk there as she drew that Galaka Crawler, and we were talking about the Hunter deck specifically. Most of the Hunter decks right now when they get that strong early curve, when they get the good early draws, the crackling Razor Moss synergy asserts itself, then suddenly it's a very powerful deck. But in this situation, their draw was just a little bit clunky. As you said, South Korea had the answers, and that's not always something N'Zoth Paladin has. One of the biggest struggling points for N'Zoth Paladin is sometimes it doesn't have the exact tool it needs exactly when they need it. They did get it, though, and they have been very judicious about making sure that they are stemming potential damage sources. They are keeping their health as high up as they can, and yeah, then you just get to the end of your deck, and look, you're the control deck. You have the tools.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because Control Paladin was considered a pretty poor matchup into Hunter for a long time. But now it feels like they have that leaner early game, the more consistent removal. And Hunter's just in a spot where they just don't do things quite as well as some of the other aggressively themed decks in the game. So you can see some glaring weaknesses from the Hunter deck. And when a Control Paladin gets a decent start, and by decent I mean Doomsayer and a weapon, that's pretty much all it takes, or Doomsayer and Consecration. Like those are, if you have those two tools, you're sitting pretty against most aggressive decks out there. So it's really tough to find a spot in order to do that.
Well, South Korea has options for this turn. They could use that Primordial Drake to just go ahead and clear the board along with a bump from one of the minions. Ragnaros Lightlord here is not a sure thing to heal the face. Not that they're necessarily facing down just a ton of pressure, but they are leaving minions on the board. Bad things can potentially happen.
Well, it heals the face.
Yeah. This one is pretty much over for Mexico. They're going to try to find a way they can maybe piece together some damage to make it competitive, but the reality is that Ragnaros sitting on the board will never be dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, this would have been their turn to go for a kill. And for example, imagine the Ragnaros Lightlord had healed the 3-2 instead of their face, and Mexico had hero powered on that one turn. They would have been in range for 100 crab, kill command, hero power for a win. So they kind of gave up one of their win conditions, but at the end of the day, it didn't really matter because they didn't get the draws that they needed. And it was a good enough early control start for Diane and South Korea that they're able to cruise control to a victory there at the end.
Yeah, we see them all hanging out, and this has been a fun group to get to watch. They're very emotive. They're a very extremely expressive group, and frankly, I just enjoy watching what they're eating and drinking at any given time, having never been to Korea. It's insightful, and one of the cool things about Global Games is that we get to learn more about other cultures.
Yeah, you just don't know. When we were in China with Kranich for the previous championship, Kranich, I saw him perusing some of the Chinese snacks, and his perusing would be, he'd go up to a snack, he'd pick it up, he'd look at it, and he'd set it back down. Go to a snack, pick it up, look at it, set it back down. And he never found a snack as far as I'm aware.
That's how you keep that trim figure, is just pick up a snack, look at it, and then don't eat it.
He did, yeah. And it's kind of weird because I've seen Kranich devour some snacks in the past. I've met him a lot of times, and he can eat a mean snack, if you know what I'm saying.
I think I know what you're saying, and I assume I'm taking it at face value and not reading anything else into it. Taking a look at the score now, Mexico on the brink. Irvin G, I talked to him a little bit, and he was excited about this opportunity. He tweeted out that they made it to top 8, but they weren't done. They wanted to get to top 4. But he also said that realistically, it would feel so bad to get to this point, go 8-1 throughout the duration of the tournament, and just lose right here.
It really would, especially for a team like Mexico that sort of came out of nowhere. None of their players are super well known. To be able to get to a point like this where you've proven everybody wrong from the get-go, you've shown that you guys have the ability to play, and you've shown that your country should be on the map for Hearthstone, and then to not get that final leap into the last event, it kind of feels like you're in that situation where you're going to be forgotten a little bit if you don't make it to the next stage. Which, I mean, isn't the case. I think they've made an impression to a lot of the people that have been watching Global Games from the beginning, but that's how it feels when you're the player in that type of situation. So,
right, you look at the whole tournament, you say 8-2 record. We beat some of the best teams in the world. This was a great showing for us. We exceeded expectations, but look, at the end of the day, eyes on the prize, and it would feel a little bit bad. They're going to have to get this win, though. It is going to be Paladin versus Shaman. So Shaman, late into the Journey to Ngoro meta, kind of undergoing a little bit of a meta renaissance. Some of the changes to elemental minions.
Big words.
I read a book once.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. You know what a book is?
Yeah, which book was it?
Do you know what a book is?
I know of books.
Point on the desk which of these things is a book.
Is this a book?
Nope, that's technology. Nope.
Is this a book?
That's a cable. All right, well, we've learned TJ.
Is this a book?
That's a phone.
Ah.
Yeah. This is a book.
Is this a book?
Nope. That's my microphone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, we've learned TJ doesn't know what a book is. But yeah, with the changes coming into the elemental minions, Jade has certainly had some more flexible options to go through. We see there Yennis and Flurry now at the helm. Yennis has been an interesting guy to talk to. He's very animated, very excited, which has kind of been a common theme with a lot of the players who this is their first time kind of on a bigger stage competing globally.
Yeah.
You know, they've really relished the opportunity, whereas, you know, for South Korea, you see handsome guy just in the back like, ugh. Wish I could be crushing people and other things at the same time.
Yeah, and you can't even see Cran. She's just over there to the left. Probably eating snacks for all we know.
Reading books.
Reading books.
All right, well, we're going to see, this time it's going to be Mexico on the Control Paladin. Now, this is a deck they've brought a couple times. They've had, obviously, great success being 8-1 at this point. South Korea, though, bringing what appears to be the Bloodlust Shaman with that Barnes tech that, you know, RDU was talking to us about at the Spring Championship. So Barnes summoning a minion, there are great opportunities to get something out of the deck that synergizes really well with Evolve. You could pull a Doppelgangster, you could pull a Thing from Below. It just adds to what is already the nature of the deck where sometimes you can just go and get rewarded.
Yeah. It's, you know, when speaking with RDU, he said he needed a little bit more fodder for the Evolve, is how he put it. He felt like, and a lot of players feel like, Evolve can sometimes feel like a dead card in hands. Against or on a board where you have a bunch of 1-drops, you don't really add too much power by evolving them. And sometimes you do it just because you have to, but it never feels, you know, super impactful. Whereas Barnes adds that extra layer of getting Evolve out earlier in matchups where you need to sort of make your board more menacing earlier in the game. So definitely like it. But I tried it out a lot and never really got that sweet spot, that juicy Barnes that just makes you jump up and exclaim to the world that you love theater.
And you love Hearthstone.
And
GG.
you love Hearthstone.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about what makes a good opening Control Paladin hand. We see some of the tools you mentioned. Doomsayer
We see
weapon,
all of the tools.
Consecration.
This is all of the tools.
This is a Control Paladin hand where nothing costs more than 4 mana.
That is incredible.
It's also, if you were seeing this back in 2014, back when the Control Paladin game didn't begin until turn 4, you're like, how do I get these tools?
Yeah.
I want to beat people.
I mentioned earlier, a great Control Paladin early hand is either Doomsayer or Weapon, or Doomsayer and Consecration. They have Doomsayer, they have Weapon, they have Consecration. They even have a Wicker Idiot Bristlebum. And
that's Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, they even have a Wicker Flame Benedict Cumberbatch. And multiple weapons to boot. So they're going to be able to chop away at this early board. They're going to be able to have an early Consecration to really reset things. And resets are where Evolved Shaman struggles the most. They have a very limited amount of reload. And their reload is dependent on key draws. And those key draws being either Doppelgangster Evolve or Thing from Belows.
Well, speaking of Devolve, we did just see that on the Doomsayer. Doomsayer, an important tool in this matchup because the Paladin only has so many removal options when it comes to big board sweeps. And once they're out of that, then generally they begin to struggle. So if in the early game you can leverage a Doomsayer, if in the early game you can leverage, say, Rallying Blade, Benedict Cumberbristle, then you have options to keep the board in check without having to commit the Consecration. And you see there, Wicker Flame, Bottom Burner. I don't know, such a confusing name.
That's it.
Powerful minion, though. Very
powerful minion, especially later on in the game when it can be buffed with the Stun-Rich Stegodon.
I believe it's pronounced Spike Ridge Burn Thistle.
There it is.
Yeah.
Because you just get additional healing from the effect.
Oh, he's not waiting, though. He's time waits for no one. I got to get my British actor who plays Sherlock down on the board now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's British, isn't he? Yeah. Yeah. The accent. Okay. All right, so the taunt going to come down, and South Korea is just going to have to figure out how they want to get through it. Have access to a number of the early tools you would want, though. That Flame Tongue Totem, the Maelstrom Portal, probably not going to get too much more value over the course of the game, given that it only does 1 damage, and Control Paladin is putting down a lot of bigger minions.
And they still have patches in the deck, so that Bloodstone Corsair could pull out patches. They could trade over the Divine Shield, Flame Tongue Totem to easily get over the Wicker Flame Burn Bristle, and provide a really tough board for Enos and Mexico to deal with because Flametongue Totem does not get reached. Or they could go with this, which is a little different and maybe better, but I don't think so right now. And Think From Below, definitely one of those power swings. And now they're just going to pass. They're playing it slow.
I was going to say, they want to play it slow and kind of see what the hand of Mexico looks like. If they commit into Flametongue Totem, that is a big resource for them.
But, I mean, the resource is there for a reason. And this deck doesn't play the long game well against a control deck like Control Paladin because they have those trump cards later on in the game. It's not a match like what we saw last week with the United States versus Taiwan, where against Taunt Warrior that throws away the quest, you can play that super long grindy game and eventually get to the point where you run them out of removal. Whereas Mexico, yeah, they can run out of removal with a Control Paladin, but they got big boys to back up that removal. They can pop Tyrion down if you play the game a little bit too slow. And at the moment, this just seems like kind of the same position they could have been in last turn. They just could have been presenting more power going into the following turn and protecting their minions with the Stonehill Defender instead of, you know, playing reactively and trying to see what it is that Mexico is holding on to.
Or refresh my memory, you were...
That's just me.
I was going to say, a little long-winded there, but you were a proponent of using the Bloodsail Corsair, correct?
On the previous turn.
Yeah, well, I mean, they ended up using it now, and now the True Silver... they did at least hit a charge with it, and that is a big deal.
That could have been the reasoning behind it. They wanted to test for True Silver.
It is a method that Paladin can help kind of keep the board clear, at least at premium targets early on, the Flametongue, the Mana Tide, and they were able to snipe that, so maybe that was a read they made, but it ended up being fairly intuitive. They are sitting in a great spot now on the board, and they are basically demanding an answer, and that's generally what Flametongue Totem does.
And they got Mana Worm, which will get +1 attack if you play Evolve, but then be evolved into something else.
It's a dark time to be a Mana Worm.
Yeah, it's like that one scene from The Conjuring. There's literally nothing that can equate to that situation of evolving a small worm into something else.
I believe it's pronounced worm, actually. All right, Coin going to come out, though, after the Stonehill Defender. And, yeah, the Rallying Blade lines up really well into the Mana Tide Totem. Rallying Blade has been a weapon that at the beginning of the set didn't really feel like it was necessarily hitting all the right spots, but way... As a Goldshire Footman that was discovered off the Stonehill Defender. You may remember our old Friends production from last week. They're a wily sort.
They are.
We see the Barnes, though, coming up off the top of the deck for South Korea. Now, this does play into Barnes Evolve, so this could be big if they choose to go with it.
Let's see if this pulls out a high-cost mini. Pulled out a totem. Mana Tide or Primal Fin? Mana Tide.
So now, do you evolve?
Enos is very upset.
You get a 4-drop off of it, but you are forfeiting the ability to draw more cards.
Yeah, I think a totem up is warranted here, especially with the things from below in the hand. I think they're going to take the draw all day, every day.
Yeah, and Enos, as you said, very, very emotional about seeing the Mana Tide Totem. Did not want to see that. Generally, as a Control Paladin, where you can start to make a dent and overcome this game is just in terms of sheer resources. You get them to commit to a lot to the board, you blow up the board, and then suddenly you're sitting pretty. But yeah, South Korea now able to generate resources. Consecration looks pretty good from where I'm sitting. You just need to get bodies off the board. You need to play around Bloodlust. You need to play around Evolve.
Consecration is fantastic in this situation. It's a full board clear. You get to develop slightly behind it with the hero power. And I talked about it earlier. Resets are just do not fit well with the Evolved Shaman's game plan. And, you know, having double Thing from below is a pretty good reload, but...
You can get a 2-drop as well off the Jade Claws.
Yeah, they can.
I could just also Maelstrom Portal there.
Maelstrom Portal and double Thing from below. And Evolve, but I don't think it's really warranted at this point. I think you want to save that for a 3rd reload. And 7-drops can be a little bit risky at times. It looks like they're thumbing over it.
Well, I mean, they've seen both Consecrations now.
I don't think it's warranted. A lot of times when you have a strong board already, you want to use Evolve as sort of a way to kind of like heal up and solidify that board position as opposed to try and make it bigger initially. It's also the only piece of a possible 3rd reload. If a full board clear came out this turn, they would have the possibility of a Doppelgangster plus Evolve if that were to be picked up next turn, which, you know, we're starting to get a little bit far into the deck, so it's not outside the realm of possibility that they may be playing to that out should this board get removed, but it's going to be tough to get removed. I think Mexico took the Goldshire Footman to just have a Spikeridge Steed activator.
I was going to say, are we just in that timeline where Goldshire Footman is going to be the hero that Mexico needs?
It is.
That is a big old caboose on that Goldshire Footman.
Hey!
But Devolve off the top is pretty big too.
It is.
Devolve, so powerful against Paladins specifically because of Spikeridge Steed. You know, we've also started to see Blessing of Kings make a resurgence, and Devolve is just a card that says, nah, doesn't exist. You get nothing.
Devolve was an interesting card when it was first revealed because I think a lot of players had mixed feelings about it. They didn't understand the power level of it. They just saw that, oh wow, it's like Evolve, but the opposite, and it costs 1 more mana.
Wow, that's fairly insulting of a voice.
Yeah, but a lot of people didn't think that it was going to be good. And it made its way into these types of decks because it is a snowball kind of card in a world with a lot of buffs and a lot of minions with very narrow but powerful effects.
Yeah, Yennis just puts his hands on his face there, seeing that Evolve came off of the top of the deck there. Is this the turn you rip Evolve?
I don't think so.
You know you're going into turn 8. Maybe you don't need to, but you have to evaluate the fact that you're going into turn 8. You understand that if Tyrion comes down, you're still good. You get through the Tyrion. If Primordial Drake comes down, you lose some totems, but you're still good.
I think this one might be a tough one for Mexico to climb out of. They have to chain taunts, and they have to hope that South Korea doesn't draw either Reload or Bloodlust. This is going to be able to play around the Bloodlust at the biggest possibility.
And remember, this is it. If Mexico cannot pull out of this game, they are done in the Hearthstone Global Games.
It's been a great run for them so far. So even if they do fall in this game, I don't think we can, you know, scoff at their accomplishments at all. But for them, it's not enough. It's not enough making it to the round of 8. They want to make it to that live finals. It's where the fame and the glory awaits for 4 countries.
And also the chance to hang out with Colento, which, you know, as we can say just recently, it's a fairly cool opportunity. Colento's a fun guy.
It's a bit intimidating. He doesn't talk much. 7 drops have a high range of variability. They also have a really wide range of effects, ranging from Baron-Geddon, which can sometimes be a pretty big detriment, to, give me some more 7 drops. Curator. Stormwind Champion.
I was going to say those because they were on the
Sword.
board. Yeah.
Bog Creeper.
Archmage Jansenitis.
That's a really good one.
That is a very good one. All right, well, the Manatee Totem is established. That Stormwind Champion bolstering the minions on board. Oh!
I think we're going with the Goldshire Footman here.
I was going to say, you have that Tarum. If you're planning on playing the Tarum, Goldshire Footman would certainly line up very well, but Yennis goes ahead and pretty much just snap picks the second Tyrion, and that is a conventional Wisdom situation where a lot of the time you don't even think about it, right? You just say, like, give me my Tyrion.
Yeah. They also sort of snap play the
Stonehill
Defender, which seems a little weird. That turn felt like it needed a little bit more thought. I think they automatically assumed that they would trade over a minion and Sunkeeper Tarum, but the Stormwind Champion makes things really awkward because if they don't kill that off, then the minions just get buffed. And that's after the 3/3. If the static buffs work consistently across all of the minions, I think that this ends up being better, and that they're not going to go with the Sunkeeper Tarum because of the fact that Stormwind Champion makes things really awkward. So, but I still think that turn may have warranted a little bit more thought. It's hard to say. Maybe they had that was their plan from the get-go. But who knows? Ooh, really sad to not see a Spell Power Totem there. That would have made things much more.
It would have been, yeah.
They would have been able to Jade Lightning the Primordial Drake instead, but they still have a very intimidating board.
Yeah, this pretty much needs to be equality off the top for Mexico, or else things are going to get really bad.
Equality won't really do much.
Oh, yeah, because the Stormwind champion.
Yeah.
That is actually, you see this sometimes with War Leader, right? That interaction.
Yeah, it's kind of a little, it's pretty awkward, to be fair. I think, you know, what Mexico's going to have to do is be in a situation where they Sunkeeper Terram and hope that they can't find a way through off the top of their deck, and then roll into Tyrians after that, after they clear away a little bit of the board. But being at 5 health, this is getting to dangerous territory. Wild Pyromancer is a useless pickup because they had one in their hand already, and having 2 does absolutely nothing. And you can tell Eunice is very stressed out. If they go with Sunkeeper Terram, so they play Wild Pyromancer, Hero Power Sunkeeper Terram, they can't even trade over the thing from below. I think they lose.
Stormwind champion, what has he done for you lately?
That's actually a clutch pickup because that ruins the math on everything for Mexico. I think it might have been even beneficial to Sunkeeper Terram last turn and just trade over the Stonehill or the Stormwind champion. But you never play in these types of situations where you have to deal with that kind of math. Almost never. And so it's really hard.
It's pretty much, like I said, it's just pretty much War Leader lately is the only thing you would run into where you'd even have to begin considering that. But yeah, Eunice is just going to go ahead and just leave it on the board here.
Yeah, and that is a 4-4. You cannot trade over that. And that's just game.
Yeah, we see South Korea just bringing in those high fives like, boys,
we're going.
We did it.
Going to the live finals, South Korea finishes the 3-0 sweep in the round of 8. And they are joining Ukraine and Czech Republic as the 3 teams currently going to the Global Games live finals. Really cool to see. South Korea has had a pretty dominant performance throughout much of HGG, and they took out a team that had an even more dominating performance than them throughout all of the phases.
Right, you know, we saw matchups where, you know, especially in Game 2, right, where Epsilon just, unfortunately, the way the Hunter drew, it did not line up with what she needed to win that game. But, you know, when we talk about the global games, it's more than just the actual plays inside the game. It's the decks you choose to queue. It's the classes, or sorry, the decks you choose to bring. So South Korea, on the whole, in this whole tournament, they had one week where they got 0-3 or 3-0 by Slovakia. And I talked to Kranich after that week, and I said, hey, you know, what happened? Why are you losing to Slovakia? Not to disrespect Slovakia, but South Korea is one of the best teams in the tournament. And they straight up admitted and said, hey, people were traveling. We got a bit lazy. We need to bring it back in. And that's something we've seen with a lot of the teams. You know, USA also had a similar experience where they took a loss and they said, okay, how do we build upon this and turn it into a positive? And South Korea since then has been very dominant in their performance.
Yeah, I think one of the big things about teams is realizing that preparation does matter in this type of tournament, because you need to be able to know your opponents. You need to be able to find the right pairings of classes in order to shore up some of the weaknesses of some of the decks that you're forced to bring that may not be well situated in like the rest of the tournament or the rest of the tournament meta, or like ladder meta, for instance, and make those decks work. And I think the teams that had success were the teams that were able to consistently line up good matchups because of their pairings. And South Korea definitely did that. Mexico did it with weird decks early on, but you could tell that, you know, the consistency may not have matched up against South Korea, who seemed to have, you know, just better picks overall in this. The Hunter not getting much work done.
Yeah, we see here on the score, South Korea 3-0 Mexico. They showed up and they showed out through the entirety of this tournament up to this point. They are now going to move on to face Czech Republic and Ukraine at the live finals. And for Mexico, as we've said, I just want to put a final ribbon on this. Mexico is a team that we haven't seen a lot of representation from across the other conventional Hearthstone Championship tournaments. And I think they put on a good performance here. And they've really shown the world that they're a creative team that comes to play.
Yeah, and there we see some of the teams advancing to the live finals, and South Korea's run through the knockout stage of the top 16, defeating Malaysia and now Mexico to make it to the live finals. And it's pretty crazy to think of the 3 teams that are currently in: Ukraine, Czech Republic, and South Korea. Even if you just look at sort of like the Hearthstone Championship Tour distribution of points throughout both of those teams' respective regions, Czech Republic and Ukraine had a ton of powerhouses last year. South Korea, a ton of powerhouses last year. If that story holds true moving forward, then it spells bad things for New Zealand in our second match of the day. But definitely an impressive run throughout all 3 phases of the Global Games for South Korea. Pretty cool to see.
Yeah, we actually have Kranich standing by. We'll go ahead and get his thoughts on the situation. Kranich, congratulations, man. Good to see you again. How you doing?
I'm really happy now. Like, I was really nervous before the match because, like, I usually didn't really feel nervous for Global Games matches because, like, I think I'm kind of experienced, but, like, today it is really important match, and I'm really, really glad that we finally won.
So how does the rest of the team feel? What's sort of the mood in that room now for you guys now qualifying and going to the live finals? Has it set in yet?
Well, like people here are just going crazy, and we're really hyped that we will go to the offline final. So yeah, we're generally happy now.
So what does a Korean Hearthstone party look like? Should you guys have one for celebration now that you've qualified? Is there lots of Hearthstone being played? Is there lots of Korean snacks being eaten? What does a Korean Hearthstone party look like?
What do you mean, for fun or what? Party?
For fun, for business.
If you party for business.
I mean, 모르겠어요.
뭐라고 했는데?
그냥 코리안 하스스톤 파티가 어떠냐는데.
We are don't play party.
They don't party.
Yeah.
So we're actually
we stay home and computer.
We just stay home, play Hearthstone for 12 hours, and like we never party.
That sounds like a great party to me, actually. Sitting at home and playing Hearthstone for 12 hours.
I was going to say, that sounds exactly like the TJ party. I know.
That is a Korean Hearthstone party at its finest.
So going up now, you will be facing either Czech Republic or Ukraine. Is there a team you would prefer not to face, or is there a team you think you have a better edge against?
Well, I mean, they're like both really, really strong teams, and we actually didn't know the actual bracket, but like we're now pretty confident because of our performance, and now I feel like it's just okay. Just playing against all the other countries, we're just confident we can just win.
Has Fleury been practicing his English? He told me that he would when I interviewed him last year at the championship.
영어 연습하라네.
작년에 말했다면서 지금 연습하고 있냐고 물어보는데요.
No?
That's the international sign for.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I feel like he lost passion.
He lost his passion for English.
Okay.
Nice one, Kranich.
That's
nice
a good meme, Kranich. Nice.
Very nice.
All right. That's going to do it for us, though, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Congratulations and good luck at the top 4.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Sounded like English to me.
I was going to say, of all the pop-offs we get when the teams win and they're saying goodbye in their interviews, Korea's power rankings cutest. What a collection of cute boys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, very, man. Kranich, I've known Kranich for like 3 years now, and you know, he's such a cool guy. And I got to interview all of the players on that team, actually, because I did a lot of interviews for HCT last year, and all 4 of those players have been in HCT over the last 2 years at a high level in one way or another. And, you know, it's pretty cool to see them now get to a point where get to see him play on that big stage again. Kind of neat.